The clock has ticked over to a new year, and here at Lower Dorks, we want to take a moment to look back at Lower Decks. Looking back at the animated series? I don't know. So let's just pour some champagne or something and start wagging our tongues till sound comes out.
Yes, I'm drinking leftover champagne from New Year's Eve. It is the fancy Corbel brand Brut, and I can't wait to drink this. So
I am drinking leftover non-alcoholic champagne imitation stolen from a work party. Huh. But it's fine. Oh. Don't worry about me. I poured some vodka in with it, so it's just as good.
Yeah, totally, completely the same thing is what I'm envisioning.
Indeed.
Well, let's talk about what we're talking about, because people might be thinking animated series, what the hell are these guys doing? If people didn't know, Lower Decks likes to reference the animated series a lot. And we wanted to look back at some of the more interesting references and just go into them and kind of mention them, chat about them a little bit. It actually prompted a animated series rewatch for us, as we mentioned a couple episodes ago. And maybe we should talk a little bit about that first, Aaron. What did you think about the animated series on the whole after we watched it?
Boy, talk about a series being all over the place. Like Star Trek is known for, having its ups and downs, and the original series especially, but the animated series,
right?
Egads! Like one episode is like high concept sci-fi, and the next one is written like it's, teenage girl fan fiction, and you're just like, what has happened here?
Yeah, it definitely feels all over the place. It's basically about a season and a half of content. It's kind of neat. I mean, it has most of the original cast of the original series, so I guess that's cool. But, I mean, one episode literally has the devil in it. Although I guess one of the motion pictures literally has God in it, too, so who am I to judge?
I don't think that was actually God, because, what would God need
just some alien,
with the starship?
That's right. That's right. But anyway, if you guys listening at home want to watch all of the animated series episodes that we've found that function as sources for the references that were used in Lower Decks, I'm going to put all that in the description of the episode. So if you want, you can pause here and watch them, and on Paramount Plus or wherever you're watching Star Trek, and come back and listen with us. But if you just want to ride by the seat of your pants and talk about crazy animated series episodes, feel free to keep on listening.
And that was not a sponsored reference there to Paramount Plus. But, if you're out there, Paramount Plus, hey, we've got a listener base of dozens of people. We could send them your way. Dozens.
That's right. Okay, well, let's start off with what may be the most general reference that we saw on Lower Decks. There's the episode No Small Parts, which starts off at the planet Beta 3, where as we know on the original series, where Landru is located. And Ransom pulls up a pad, and he's got a picture of those old scientists on it, which is literally a screen grab of Kirk and Spock from the animated series.
Yes, from the episode The Practical Joker.
Yeah, see, I know we talked about that before, but are you sure?
You know what? I am 99.9% sure. 99.
What gives you such confidence?
Well, you see, I did a reverse image search as I scanned through the original episode. And I came up with a computer-modeled, data-driven certainty of 99.9% that everything I'm saying right now is bullshit. And I'm just guessing here.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the still now, and this could be from any episode, man. There are so many Kirk Spock episodes in the animated series.
If you say so. I just wanted to talk about the episode where it turns out that the Enterprise is a huge jerk, and the only reason nobody noticed it was because it wasn't sentient yet. Oh, and as soon as they find out the Enterprise is sentient, whole crew just conspires to murder the Enterprise.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm not? Nope.
We had to bring up that episode somehow.
Indeed.
Yes, but at least it was pretty cool to actually see that, it's kind of like it's some kind of in-universe canon of some kind.
I just found it hilarious that they didn't bother to update to the Lower Decks animation style. It looks like it's just a still literally from the animated series.
Which just makes it more hilarious,
Indeed.
I think. But let's move on to the next solid reference we have, and that is what is identified in the animated series as the Vendorians. So on Lower Decks, this appears in the episode Envoys. It's a very brief shot. And if you recall in that episode, Mariner and Boimler walk into the Andorian bar, and there is a shapeshifter who's, pretending to be an old Andorian. And he goes, "Oh, my bones!" If you recall that.
Spot on impersonation. Spot on.
Thank you. I could do voice work, right? But no, so there's this brief shot. Again, this is a frame by frame situation where if you pause right between the animations, you can see what this alien looks like, and it's pulled right out of the animated series. The episode is The Survivor.
When we first watched this episode, I'm like, I know I've seen that thing before somewhere. But it wasn't until the, rewatch of the animated series that, like, it all came together. Then I'm like, oh yeah, that's that thing, the shape-shifting aliens.
Yes. In that animated series episode, they actually go into a fair amount of detail on how these guys work. They just rearrange their molecular structure to anything with the same size and mass, although in that episode, a Vendorian becomes a deflector shield for the Enterprise too, so, that is a thing for some reason.
Apparently deflector shields are really small. Go figure.
Yeah, just if they're person sized, you got to placement is key.
Yes.
Either that, or you have to get like 100 Vendorians and make them into like a mesh.
It's amazing that they're trapped on their home planet because they mentioned that they've basically been quarantined there, but they sometimes work as spies for the Romulans. I mean, you think a bunch of them could just get together and form a starship? They're like Voltron, man. Get enough of them together, and you got a giant cat robot. You're good to go.
I know, right? Vendorians, no excuse. But the kind of funny part of that episode, the animated series episode, is according to the episode, the more the Vendorian stays in the shape it's assuming, the more they take on the memory and emotions of the previous host, I assume. So literally, that episode is the Romulans are foiled by the power of love. So I'm just sad we didn't get to see that in the Lower Decks.
The real question is, what sort of emotional state does a deflector shield have? I'm just wondering.
Great question.
Just thinking here.
Are you just kind of upset, or are you kind of protective?
Yeah,
or...
I mean, because we all know that if you took the shape of the Enterprise's computer, the emotional state would be jerk. But
jerk, yeah.
Not sure about the deflector itself.
Oh man, it's so cool. It's just cool to see such a small cameo in that episode Envoys. But there's this whole episode with the whole antagonist are these guys, and you know what? We know their weakness, love. But let's move on. Let's talk about Spock 2. I think this is one of the more obvious animated series references. On the Lower Decks episode, Kayshon, His Eyes Open, on the collector ship. That's the ginormous skeleton hanging from the ceiling that is kind of in the remnants of the original series science uniform. This is actually a direct pull from the animated series episode The Infinite Vulcan, Funny enough, written by Walter Koenig. This is where the reason why there's a giant Spock in the first place is because Spock is kidnapped by a guy from the Eugenics Wars, who hilariously, one of his names is Stavros, not to be confused with my name, which is Stavros, completely different.
We know you had your name changed to disassociate from your father. It's okay.
Yeah, it's whole getting away from the Eugenics Wars thing.
Nobody wants to be associated with a genocidal maniac.
That is true. And the whole reason why Spock 2 is huge in that episode, The Infinite Vulcan, I think is because Stavros Caniculus, the Eugenics War dude, had cloned himself so many times, and I assume with each subsequent clone he just got bigger and bigger just because
I don't think that's
size matters.
I don't think that's how that works at all. I think he was a short man, and when he cloned himself, he said, "I'm going to fix this," and went a little overboard.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm saying. He went more and more before, the first few clones, maybe a couple inches here or there, but before long he's just a giant.
Or he just got tired of being pushed around. Said, "Ain't nobody gonna push me around no more."
That's right.
And now he's depending on the shot, 30 feet tall or 12 feet tall.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, the whole reason why he's large just makes no sense in the episode. I love that the how they disarm needing an army of giant Spocks, because the Federation already does everything that Stavros Caniculus does.
Yeah, it does a shit job at it. I don't know how that argument ever won. We make peace. We're just at war with Romulans and the Kzinti and Klingons and Gorn but yeah, peace. All about peace. With 3 of our neighbors. Everybody else, war.
Yeah. My favorite part of that episode is potentially when Spock 2, when he does the single fingertip mind meld to Spock, like original Spock, and just like instantly cures him of all the mental issues in the episode. Just hilarious.
Yes, not the ones he started the episode with, but the ones he developed throughout the episode.
Yes. Yes.
Condescending jerk. Still a mental defect he's got.
Yes. So according to the episode, giant Spock 2, and Caniculus stay on the planet to help like undo the damage they've done to the natives there, which is this whole other side plot that doesn't even need to exist, but it does in that episode for some reason. So we don't know why his remains are just hanging from a ceiling in the collector ship. But if you want to know the origins about Spock 2, you can just watch Infinite Vulcan.
Yep. Giantism tends to lead to an early death. But on happier notes, I'm going to take a quick sideways.
Okay.
Because there's, in Kayshon His Eyes Open, the episode with, of course, giant Spock. In another scene, we see a bunch of other things in the background, bones of that same room. And there is what appears to be a giant pterodactyl, which shows up in the episode Once Upon a Planet. And I think this is a skeleton of that giant purple pterodactyl for some reason.
That's a great call out. I know that the random pterodactyl monsters show up in a couple different episodes just because I assume they were cheap to continue to reuse the animation.
So I'm not sure they actually do, because there's the pterodactyl things, and then there's, which it's like an actual pterodactyl looking thing. Once Upon a Planet being the planet that is they visit the planet that is, what is it, Omicron Delta, and it creates illusions, and they use it as a shore leave planet.
Right.
The purple pterodactyl shows up in that episode, but in other episodes, there's actually these weird things called, what are they called? Butt-wing billies? That they're like these weird dragon things that don't have like any hands or feet, but they've got wings on their butt that they use to fly around. Super weird.
Okay.
Yeah, so butt-wing billies and pterodactyls, two different things.
Amazing.
Yes.
Excellent call out. But gosh, let's move on. This might be one of my favorites, the Pandronians. So of course we see a Pandronian in the Lower Decks episode I, Excretus. That's the kind of the nefarious drill instructor that shows up and is out to get everyone for bad test scores because she fixed the tests. We've seen another Pandronian in the animated series episode Bem. That's where we yet again have another Pandronian observer who's named Bem. He tests Kirk and Spock by seeing how they interact with the primitive alien species by, of course, sabotaging them.
Yes, two very similar plots. I guess all Pandronians are just test-giving jerks. I don't know. But it's cool, because like they
that's like their thing.
And they break her into pieces, and the individual pieces fly, and their legs have arms.
Yeah. How does that work? I'm kind of because in the Lower Decks episode, the body parts are all like flying around the bridge, and I'm like, are they going to be okay? Like, can they just set themselves back together again? What's going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a multi-organism. They're, what do they call them? A collective organism?
Or a colony.
Yes,
or like
colony
that.
creatures. That's what it was.
Right.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
But at least they learned how to speak Federation Standard between the animated series and the Lower Decks episodes.
Yes.
As I recall in Bem, he kind of speaks in alien, as we found out in animated series. Anytime there's an alien, they all kind of speak in a voice like this.
Sometimes they speak like this. Yes. The two alien
which
voices
one was Bem?
they do. I don't remember which one Bem was. I feel like they do one where it's, and I think it's actually, isn't it Doohan that does the weird?
I think so.
The weird talks like this voice. Mm-hmm, yes, sir.
But yeah, just like aliens that Planet of the Hats trope.
Yes.
Pandronians are jerks that give tests that aren't fair. So,
an entire culture
now
built around test giving.
That's right.
Sounds like my kind of place. I think I would excel there.
Yes. Why don't you just move to?
I'm not good at virtually anything except cheating on tests. Number one skill I've got.
You too can be a successful drill instructor.
And that's why I made it to be an airline pilot for one flight.
Oh my. Well, speaking of flights, let's talk about bird people.
Oh boy, bird people.
You may recall,
not to be confused with bird person.
Yeah, they're people. They're several people. Indeed. Actually.
Yes,
as I recall. But it's in the Lower Decks episode Embarrassment of Dooplers. Although I was reading up earlier, apparently they show up in Envoys in the background as well. If you pay close attention there. But,
I didn't apparently.
Mostly see them in.
Didn't see them.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no. Envoys is the one where they're with the drunk Klingon. Yeah, they were in that episode.
Yes.
I totally saw them.
Yes,
now
they're like kind of in the background there.
Yes.
But during the chase scene, the car chase scene in Embarrassment of Dooplers, they show up and have voice lines. So if you want to see how they look, that's the episode to go to. So they're here's the thing about bird people. There are several types of bird people in the animated series.
Well, really only
they show
two.
up in 2 different episodes at least. Yeah,
and I'm not even sure.
Two is already more than enough.
But we're not even sure they're separate species. I mean, like that's not like alpha canon. It's not shown in the show anywhere.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's all kind of beta canon stuff. But the episodes in question are Yesteryear, where they are referred to in beta canon as Aurelians, and then in the episode Jihad, where they're referred to as Skorr, Skorr. Completely different roles. In Yesteryear, they show up. One shows up as a scientist studying the Guardian of Forever in that episode. In Jihad, they are like warmongery aliens that can breed like an army in the billions in 2 years or something. Just like warmonger people.
Yeah, but wasn't that the whole
thing? They look
thing?
very, very similar.
Wasn't that the whole thing about them? They were like reformed warmongers, and they're like the oldest species known. Yeah, so like they weren't really warmongers anymore. So for all we know, like some of them had gone on to be scientists, and those were the dudes.
Yeah,
maybe it was the Vulcans that taught them how to tame their bloodthirsty passions and think more logically. Look, I'm building connections here, just like the fan base likes. Anyways,
well, maybe you're right.
But that is true. They're very similar looking, enough that they could be the same species with like just different features. But there is variance between the two.
Yeah, I could think the Skorr character in Jihad has some horns on his head, maybe. But otherwise, they look very similar. It's obvious that they're saving some production costs and reused the same character and did some recoloring and stuff. So
yeah, Yesteryear,
but still
super weird episode, by the way. Good plot, decent characterizations. Children Vulcans in Speedos and bandoliers.
Yes.
Oof. Like
that was
I guess that's the logical fashion for toddlers. Boy.
Yeah, that was a little hard to watch. It's weird because that episode, plot-wise, is one of the more solid ones, right? Like Spock goes back in time to, save his, child self, but then, like all the Vulcan youths are questionably dressed.
Yeah, I would love to pick the art director's brain on that episode and figure out what he was drinking and see if I could try it myself.
So if you had to pick, which ones are... So assuming they're different species, Aurelian and Skorr, which ones are we looking at in the Embarrassment of Dooplers shot in the Arboretum?
You know what? Assuming they're different species, I'm going to go with Aurelians because they appeared to be members of the Federation. Okay. But I don't think they're different species. I think it's same species.
Just the same.
That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. But anyways.
I think you're right. Assuming they're two, then it's got to be Aurelians.
So Ocean's Jihad... Jihad. Ocean's 11, whole different movie of assembling a team to carry out a heist.
Completely.
Jihad, though, also has another reference in it that pops up in Lower Decks.
Do tell.
Well, I mean, it's the green bouncers from...
the green guy.
Yeah, from an Embarrassment of Dooplers.
Yeah.
What's his name?
EM3
Green is the name of the character in Jihad.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, they're bouncers and waiters at the party in an Embarrassment of Dooplers.
You gotta wonder, like, Mike McFan, come on, like, what's going on here? Like, they're characterized as cowardly lockpicks in this episode. And I guess, like, they're making Embarrassment of Dooplers and like, damn, we need aliens to, like, be a bouncer. What do we got? And like somebody went to animated series and like, what about this green guy? And they're like, yes, let's bringing him in to be the bouncer.
But here's the real funny thing about that is they're not characterized as cowardly. I mean, they are characterized as cowardly, but the way we find that out first is the dude's all like, yeah, my race is what you would call cowards. And you're like, Nobody's gonna admit that. Like, the Klingons show up on your doorstep, you're not gonna answer their hail and be like, "Hello, I am EM3 Green, representative of the cowardly race." No, what's going on here?
He's he just knows it's going to come up in conversation, so he's just preempting all the discussion.
He's like, "I know you may have heard some things about me and my people. Yes, we are cowards. I will betray you at the drop of the hat. So, let's not drop any hats, people."
Yeah. I hated that character in that episode.
I loved him, dude. He was my favorite character. The entire series. Number one, man. I would watch a show about him and him only. Get that man a ship. You know what? In fact, I think that was the biggest flaw of Picard. They should not have had Rios, and it should have been EM3 Green in his place. Imagine how much better that show would have been. To the moon, baby.
If you're looking for a series that has so according to Beta Canon, these guys are called Nasat. And if you are desperately looking for more cowardly people in your daily Star Trek life, you can read the Corps of Engineers books, and apparently there is a Nasat character in those books. So as one of the main cast. So if you need some more, you can pick up Corps of Engineers.
God, if I was literate,
read all about
I would be all over that.
I know. So one step at a time. You got the alphabet, then words, then Corps of Engineers novels.
Hell of a reason to learn to read.
There you go. I knew we could find your motivation somewhere.
Okay, what's next? What do we got?
Yeah, let's move on to perhaps the biggest and most intricate of the animated series references. And that is the Kzinti, or the Kzinti. Did we decide it was Kzinti or Zinti?
I think it's pronounced both ways.
Kzinti?
I've heard it both ways.
Okay. Kzinti is dangerously close to Zindi, so maybe I'll pronounce the K. Kzinti.
I'm just going to call them weird cat people.
Cat people. Got
weird
it.
Cat people.
Cat people with fish
Be
ears.
specific.
Yeah.
Weird cat people.
But we mainly see the Kzinti character in the episode The Spy Humungous. He's the cat-like person in the Red Shirt Club, the bunch of the jerkhole people that try and tell Boimler what to do. But you've also seen them in the background on some episodes before that, so they definitely appear in other episodes.
Yes.
But the animated series show in question is an episode called The Slaver Weapon, and that is the episode written by Larry Niven. And of course, Larry Niven is known for writing... So I don't know, you may know more about the background of the Kzinti than I do, but Larry Niven is a well-known SF writer. He's written like a ton of books about Kzinti wars, and so this animated series episode kind of merges in some of the ideas that he's had in some of his human Kzinti war books and Star Trek universe.
Yeah, it was such a weird combination to do at that time. But speaking specifically about their appearance in, Lower Decks, I love the fact that in the original series episode, they're all like hunched over in this weird, creepy way. And
yes, especially the telepath.
Yes,
guy. So sad.
Oh god, he looked horrible. Like you wanted.
He was not in good shape.
You just wanted to pet him and be like, "It'll be okay, kitty." But it's funny because you assume that's how Kzinti are, right? And then in Lower Decks, they have the whole bit about it just being bad posture.
I know. I assume that Kzinti on Lower Decks is not actually the telepath, which is in the animated series show was in very bad shape, like hunchback and all that. Hilariously, in the animated series episode, they fool the Kzinti telepath by, all you got to do is, the Kzinti are meat eaters, so just think about eating raw vegetables, and that'll fuck them up.
Which I don't think that's how it works. I mean, there's a reason that vegetarians and vegans can sometimes be put off by people eating meat, but I don't think it works in reverse, right? There's nobody they're not like, we don't eat plants because they're sacred to us, and we, fiber is murder. No, I don't think that would work.
Hey, it works in this episode, and the whole vegetarianism thing becomes a major plot point where Spock attacks the Kzinti captain and lets him live, and that's this major cultural affront because like the vegetarian attacked him and left him alive.
Yes.
So major plot point.
Yeah, and that's Spock's MO, humiliating people. Entire series.
That's right. That's something about the animated series in general. Like, people are mean in this show. Like McCoy and Spock,
meaner.
like horrible jazz.
Like McCoy, like
amazing.
In the original series, it's like he gets in a barb here or there, and it's all good-natured fun. And in this one, it's just like, listen up, Spock, and then it's a stream of profanity, you know? I mean, that never happens. But that's the feeling you get from it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, they all sleep with one eye open, you know? I think, like, Kirk is, like, the only one who doesn't really come across as way more of a jerk in the animated series.
Yeah. Yeah, McCoy and Spock are at each other's throats all the time. It is... I can't decide if it's, like, disturbing or hilarious. Somewhere in between.
Yeah, and like things. Sometimes it'll be like they'll say something or do something that's just like, oh my god, that's horrible, and like the whole crew will like laugh together about it, and you're just like, that's not funny, man. That's messed up.
I know.
Like that is not what friends say to each other. Definitely less wholesome than Lower Decks.
Yes,
in that regard.
Certainly. But back to the Kzinti for a moment. I thought one of the most hilarious definers of their race is they have an issue with like the James Bond villain monologues where they will describe every part of their evil plan to the people they're holding captive.
Yeah.
Kind of an issue. Historically, it doesn't go well for James Bond villains.
No, and they do that a lot in the animated series. There's just a lot of exposition there. Yeah. A lot of the episodes feature, you know, somebody just standing around. I guess that's like a Star Trek thing, right? But I think in the newer series, they do it much more dynamically, where it happens as a part of a conversation rather than a monologue.
Right.
But, you know, again, that goes back to the animated series is also all over the place, because there's other episodes where they have really great exchanges.
Yeah. That's true. This one in particular, though, like, just very, very monologue-y.
You know, I will say, though, this episode is probably one of the, like, few episodes from the animated series where I'm all like, I love the plot of it, like the instigating plot, which is the stasis boxes. Yes. Mildly ridiculous concept, but like as a starter for an episode, the idea that there's these boxes filled with ancient relics held in stasis, and the only way to find them is with another box. Yeah. And I mean, like I could see a whole TV series built around that. It's just such a neat concept. Mildly ridiculous, but very neat nonetheless.
Too bad we don't see a lot of what makes the Kzinti on Lower Decks. He's just kind of a alien dude that looks, you know, he's got the fish ears and looks cat-like. But maybe you know more about this than I do, but, you know, having the Kzinti reappear has looked like it was basically a big deal. Like, from what I understand, there's some copyright issues. Like, Larry Niven didn't want the Star Trek franchise to have access to the Kzinti. Do you know any more about that?
I don't know if it was so much Niven as it was the Niven estate, because it's important to realize that there's a big gulf in time between the animated series and then when we get back to it in TNG. But there's a few moments, right, where it gets referenced. Oh, these guys were supposed to be the Kzinti. Like, the Zenkethi were supposedly, from DS9, you never see, you just hear referenced. That was supposed to be the Kzinti, right? And I think they were supposed to show up in TNG somewhere. They were in talks to use them in Enterprise before it got canceled. But it's one of those things, supposedly is a big rights issue, specifically who owned it and, you know, what royalties would be involved. And one of the things that they never talk about with, like, cross-utilization is that whatever contract you work out by having these crossover episodes is that both parties have to agree and they have to formulate a contract. There has to be specific monetary rules set in place for what sort of royalties are paid out. A lot of times they're only set for so long. So we could run into a situation where you have your, you know, box set and it's out on the shelves, or it can be streaming on a particular platform, and then 10 years down the road, suddenly they have to stop producing those box sets, or suddenly they have to, you know, well, this streaming service can only stream this episode, and this streaming service can only stream these episodes, and it's just a headache for, you know, the lawyers who figure all this stuff out.
Right.
And of course,
It makes sense.
and lawyers being the upstanding model citizens they are, who we all love and revere for what they do for society. We don't want to make things harder on them.
Probably not. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, like you said, it's been in negotiations for several Star Trek shows, so it seems like they must have pulled some magic to get this to work in general.
Or, just every other series maybe it was just like, hey, let's use the Kzinti, and then somebody's all like, well, here's the problem with that, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. Here's the Zenkethi,
There we go.
Oh crap, let's paint this thing blue and say it's something else.
Yes, definitely not Aurelians. They're called the Skorr now, so just give them a new paint job.
Whatever.
Well, I think that ends our list of random animated series references from Star Trek.
And it's one of those things that, like, I am betting there are probably a lot more. Some things are just like name drops, but they name drop so many
a lot of stuff.
Things.
Yeah.
I would really love to go over the collector ship with like a fine-tooth comb. Because, like, even we, every time we talk about it, we're like, oh, there's this, there's that. And then every once in a while, it'll be like, hey, I didn't notice this the first time. And it's some, new thing in, like, the corner of a shot. Like, only when we were preparing for recording this episode did I realize that one of those pterodactyls didn't look like a normal pterodactyl. And I went back and I'm like, I think that's an animated series reference.
I definitely want to know, for any listeners out there, if we missed an animated series reference that you liked, drop it in the comments and we'll take a look, because there's got to be more out there. These are just, I feel like we're scratching the surface. This is the tip of the iceberg as far as animated series episodes, like the obvious stuff.
I'm sure,
and if you know more, drop in the comments.
And I'm sure we'll be back next year with another episode just talking about the new animated series references, because they seem to be cramming them in faster and faster, and there's not much animated series to reference.
That's true. But they're finding things, let me tell you. They're pulling things from the animated show.
But yeah, we've really gone to town tonight. But I do think that's it. It's a week past midnight, and just so you know, you don't have to wait till this time next year to get your Lower Dorks fix. You can check us out on Twitter at Lower Dorks for updates. We'll have episodes between now and then. Or, you can grab the champagne, your loudest fireworks, and celebrate like it's the new year every night. Because it's always party time at Stavros' house.
Bring champagne and party on.